Oh, hi. You're here. This is actually is a real. Oh, hi. You're here. Oh, hi. Do it properly. Oh, hi. You're here. This is actually a real. Oh, hi. You're here because I was putting my copy of Who's Next back into the CD case, and what an album! This was the when CDs first came out. I didn't like the sound of them. I can actually remember the very first song I ever heard on CD, and it was "News of the World" by Queen, which is a very kind of bassy album. It's got a lot of warmth to it, that album. And the CD version, when I first heard it, couldn't like must have been late '80s. It sounded very thin, and it didn't have that sort of like rolling deep atmosphere the vinyl had, and the cassette had it too. So I for years I didn't want any CDs, and then I succumbed and got myself a Sony Discman, which I still have, and I think it still works. A great little thing. And then I eventually got a proper CD player for my stereo. And one of the first things well, in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, they started. They got the CD technology better, and they started re-releasing the previous CDs, and this Who special edition of Who's Next was one of them, and it has a bunch of extra songs and a couple of remixes, and it absolutely has the warmth and the tonal depth of the LP, the vinyl. So it took CDs a good 5 6 years before they didn't sound like fucking shite. But yeah, I mean, could you imagine like in 1971, whenever this came out, and you're a teenager? I was only a little kid at the time, so I didn't discover this kind of incarnation of the Who until many years later. It's our usual thing. It's like an older brother, an older sister of a friend who was a teenager when like the likes of Who's Next came out, and you know they play it for you, and you instantly recognize that this is the work of the gods. I think Bab O'Reilly. Imagine like being a teenager, say 15, and you go to a shop in town, and you come home and you put this on your album in 1971, and in the midst of all the hippie shite out there, all the hippie fucking music, you hear it like Baba O'Reilly, and the way it builds up, doom, 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 and the way the drama and the intensity builds up, and the way what does this person want? The way the drama and the intensity builds up. Oh look, it's Keith Moon's Ghost, but the way the drama and intensity builds up, and the whole album is brilliant. The only song I don't like is My Wife. I love Going Mobile. Oh, that's a fantastic song. Won't Get Fooled Again, of course, is on here. Baba O'Reilly, I just mentioned. Love Is for Keeping. And Love Is for Keeping, I believe, was recorded as a heavy rocker. But the way they redid it on Who's Next, it sounds like it's very Van Morrison-y. It has that kind of Van Morrison, American West Coast tonal quality that is like the albums around like the time he made Astral Weeks. That kind of sound, and it works. It totally works. I mean, these guys were gods. These fucking gods. And yeah, imagine being a teenager in 1971, coming home and putting this on, and just it starts with Baba O'Reilly and ends with Won't Get Fooled Again, which is like the first song probably ever written to to call out democracy for the bullshit that it is. So you got a little, you got a just. I believe this is actually it was a concept album for a movie called The Lighthouse, or a stage musical or something. But I'm glad they released it as a regular album. And yeah, 1971. If I had been like 15 or 14 in 1971, I was 14 a bit later, as you can tell from my Anarchy T-shirt. See, the fucker never changed. The fucker never changed. That's what somebody said to me once. My relatives were. He hasn't fucking changed. He's still the fucking same as when he was a teenager. No, I will never change. I was an anarchist. I was an anarchist when I was 14, and I'm still an anarchist. But that would have been my music, and I have faint memories of older kids who were into that music. You know, when I got older, and boot boys. Boot boys were an interesting phenomena. You know, a youth culture phenomena of the early 70s, and the boot boys, they kind of came out of skinhead and suede head thing. So you had the skinhead thing and the suede head thing of the 60s, Motown music, and you know that's probably why, like, and you had the Mods, that was something like a lot of it was Motown music as well, and the Who. You know, the Who, there was kind of a big crossover, but Boot Boys kind of came out they evolved out of that scene. They wore a lot of the same clothes, like the Wrangler jackets and the Doc Marten boots, and the jeans a bit higher up to show the actual length of the boots, and they had long hair. That was really what distinguished them from the suede heads and the skinheads. That they had long hair, and they were into the Who, and they were into the Mott the Hoople, and it was a tough scene. A big it was a big deal. Street fighting, you know, like gangs fighting, and they were heavily involved in soccer hooliganism and things like that. All the hooliganism firms that began, they would have all spawned out of the boot boy movement of the early 70s. And they had their own dances and everything, where they'd put the lads would all stand with their hands on their belts on their sides, and they'd like doing this, you know, to like, you know, roll away the stone by Mott the Hoople. And yeah, street fighting. There was a when I was a little kid, there was the remnants of a boot boy gang in Ballymun called the Black Catholics. They were very heavily, and again, they were very heavily involved with Bohemians, this football club. So you had that whole thing. They actually had a punk band as well, I believe, at one time as well. They're basically all the same extended family. Apparently, Bono mentions them in his new biography. This is one of the reasons I want to read it, because I'd like to read how his views of Ballymun back then were. See how much shite he's talking. So yeah, I'm back. Oh hi, you're here. I'm back again. I was back in the debate. Ooh, back in slight detour into my musical past and what I appreciate in good music. And so I'm back here in Sligo, back to regular day today, after a week travelling around the country, megalithing, and I was burnt out last night, I was wrecked, but I finally got some good sleep after about 4 a.m. and yeah, it was cool. And the weather's very humid here again, all over the country. Ambulances all over the fucking place. I saw a terrible accident on the M6 motorway between Ballinasloe and Athlone, and three ironically supermarket delivery trucks had something that happened on the road. I don't know if the driver had needlecraft or anything, but the cab had been completely ripped off one of the delivery trucks. So I think it was a Super Value delivery truck. And I hope, it didn't look pretty bad. I hope the driver was okay. But it was pretty awful. And just ripped off like a toy. Like a plastic kit. And I got something caught in my throat. A girl gave me a coconut marshmallow thing today. And, get the little piece of... excuse me, a little piece of desiccated coconut caught in the back of your throat. But, yeah, all over the country. all over the country. But there's some there's been some good research comes out lately from academia on basically the NPC thing. We'll have to come up with a new name for NPCs because it's going to set off the panning thing on YouTube. So I don't know what's an empty vessel. Pringles tubes. You know, like Pringles, they come in a tube. Well, that's what we'll call NPCs in code from now on. Pringle tubes. So anyway, there's been some good research into Pringles tubes, and it validates the what we've been saying, what we've discovered about them in recent years, and most disturbingly, well, not disturbingly, if anything, if you're one of us and you're this, it's just hover. Get out, you cunt. It's just hovering right at the back of my throat. It's on the top of the throat. The the disturbing, but to us, sort of like heartening, validating thing was that they said about roughly around 75% of population is a Pringles tube to one degree or another, and and it turns out that it's like now I've seen some good data that it's now 70 in the Western world. 75% of the needlecrafted, the fully needlecrafted right up to the foghorn leghorn are 70 same exact same percentages. The numbers there basically NPCs. So it's like the data, it couldn't be any more perfect. How they would inject, how they would avail, be blessed with the transubstantiation of the sacred needlecraft, even though the sacred needlecraft hadn't been fully looked into in terms of its longevity potentials. The Pringles tubes are still lined up to be transubstantiated, and that's what all the ambulances all over the place are. Uh, Another thing I noticed was, this will probably be for the psychic weather on Monday, but I'll go into a bit here. The NPCs are in a state between two programs. They haven't been fully programmed yet between states. And I saw a post about Donald Trump is coming to Ireland. Something to do with his golf course that he has. He has a big golf course resort here. Something to do with that. And some outfla in Dublin writes, will he be housing any refugees? Now, what has Donald Trump got to do with housing refugees on a golf course? And I looked into it and I realised this guy was an empty Pringles tube who knew that he had been programmed as data points. His program was to run a script to issue a retort that had been given to him by mainstream media, you know, within the context of Trump derangement syndrome. But because he hadn't been fully programmed to deal with this emerging situation, he blurted out something about Trump and housing refugees, where he glued two separate programs put into his Pringles tube that didn't quite gel properly, but he was still, in a Pavlovian sense, compelled to issue it. And it was just, and I saw a few like that, and it was just basically they knew they had to say something, but haven't been recently programmed with a a new TDS program. So they essentially, what you get is corrupted data, and essentially they crash like a computer crashes. They don't really know how to execute the file, because they can't hit execute because they haven't been given the new string of code from the mainstream media to hit execute. That reminds me, the Kate Bush song from the Central World album. I press execute. Oh, that's just real sexy how she sings that. As I press execute, I was loading a new program into my computer. That song. Uh, Hello, is there anyone out there? Like the first internet song about the internet. But she goes, I press execute. And she's kind of like a metaphor, like hitting the execute button on the computer. It's like executing your day-to-day personality to create a online one. A very clever woman she was, still is. But yeah, so they don't have a program to run, and when they're between programs, they literally crash like a computer because they still have the Pavlovian impulsive drive of the Pringles tube, but they don't have the string of code that has been updated, like the new version of TDS 2.0, in order to make a coherent sentence, so they glue two things together. So they're supposed to be outraged by refugees, and they're supposed to be outraged by Trump, but they can't resolve the two in that program running in their mind. So they kind of put out corrupted code and then crash. Maybe you switch them off and switch them on again, they'll actually get working again. But you really do see how they're robots. 75% of people out there are robots. They're flesh computers, and the Pringles tube flesh computers, and they absolutely need to be given new information, or they don't know what to do. They literally crash like a computer. And another thing I noticed is all the Ukrainian flags seem to be all down around the country. The Ukrainian flags have all vanished. Every Pringles tube and Karen, and around the country had a Ukrainian flag hanging outside their window, and they've all vanished now. They're all gone. So that program has been run, and it's run out, and they haven't got any new instructions. They're between programs right now. So the Pringles tubes are between programs right now. And so it's interesting to observe them crashing online. They try to start debates with people in newspaper comment sections, and they crash because they haven't had the latest string of code from the media to inform them. Now, one of the most repugnant individuals in Irish propaganda service is someone called uh, Joe Duffy, and he has a show in the afternoon on national radio, RTE, called Liveline. Now, Liveline, to me, it was always like an insight into just how fucking stupid the average person in this country is. And they're all whingers and complainers and moaners. And there's contrarian types that complain for the sake of it. And then he was like a pompous oaf, pretending to be like a Dublin working class guy. And if anybody said something like, "We have some real problems in this part of Dublin, Joe. It has to be dealt with. It's just not a joke. It could be a serious problem." And he'll go, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know the place you're talking about. It's on the South Circular Road. Yeah. Do you remember the South Circular Road when we were kids? There was the Stella Cinema, and there was the Italian ice cream place, Marconi's. Yeah, remember that? Wasn't that great? You could get strawberry if you wanted. Yeah, I know, Joe, but it's you have to understand we have a serious issue in this community. Oh yeah, I know, but I'm just remembering. Yeah, it was great. Do you remember we had this strawberry ice cream, and they had chocolate ice cream, and they had raspberry, strawberry. No, it was a strawberry. It was vanilla, I think. It was chocolate. It was either strawberry or raspberry. Do you remember that, Jack? No, no, Joe, we're having a serious problem here. You're right. It was strawberry. It was strawberry, and the machine had, when he pulled the handle down, you could select what ice cream you wanted in the cone. But there was also a tub, and he could pull all three together, and you got Neapolitan ice cream, mixture of the strawberry, the vanilla, and the chocolate. It was lovely. Do you remember that? Do you remember that, Jack? Oh, Joe, I've got a knife in the back of my head. I've just been stabbed by one of the gang members. you know, was it what kind of knife was it? Was it a Swiss Army knife? I mean, it was a Swiss Army knife. But no, I can't see it. Or it was a Bowie knife. Why did they call it a Bowie knife? We often wondered that. Why did they call it a Bowie knife? Is it something to do with your man David Bowie? You know, you remember him, David Bowie? Remember him, Uncle, Major Tom? If you have, if anyone else is, okay, Jack's just gone off the line. If anyone else knows why David Bowie has a knife named after him, could you call the show? That's what it's like. You see, a social safety valve. But anyway, that fucker at Liveline, and you have all the head cases and hypochondriacs around the country. They have live dial and speed dial, and he was the cunt who said that demanded that the Irish national soccer team, that Stephen Kenny, the manager of the Irish national soccer team, only pick players who had been needle crafted. And here he was like demanding the team selection be based on the players who've been needle crafted. And one of them was a young lad called Callum Robinson. And he said on the air, he said, this guy has had COVID more times than he scored goals for Ireland. And it was beautiful. In the next two matches, Callum Robinson scored 5 goals, a hat trick in the next one, and two in the one after that. So, I mean, that was kind of like a black magic spell that Joe Duffy was finished from that point on. But it turns out now that Duffy's audience has collapsed in recent times. Not that it would affect his like $500,000 a year salary or anything like that for like working 2 hours a day, but he's his audience has collapsed, and I think it's because they fluttered away into the next world because of the transubstantiation of the so sacred needlecraft. They would all his listeners would be the typical to like run out and get the foghorn, leghorn, and boy say boy as soon as it arrived, and they're all dead now. They're all dead. And do you remember that RT reporter that spoke about in 2020 when the transubstantiation first came out and they started injecting the over 70s? And it was in the Tivoli Theatre in Ballymun where I grew up. I could bet you that all those people in that audience were dead. You remember? I can finally hug my grandchild. What kind of fucking dumb bitch are you? I can hug my grandchild. And wonder if what are you going to do when you get now that you're protected? Shopping. And there's another one. He goes, another old fucker, and he goes, I can go visit me brother. And you think he's going to say his brother lives in Boston or his brother lives in London or Manchester. He goes, where does your brother live? Fisborough. A 15-minute bus ride down the road, and he needs a fucking transubstantiation to go see his brother. 15 minutes bus ride down the road in Fisborough. I mean, it was the height of it, of the madness. But he's lost a huge number of his audience. It's great, and they're probably all dead. And so it'd be interesting to see how that goes. So that's also part of this dip. We're in a kind of a dip right now, a dip where they don't quite know what they're unleash for the next thing. But we shall see if any of you are experiencing this dip where the empty Pringles tubes can't run their program. Let me know. Let me know. And I'm also on. I'm gonna put. I've done a new show. I think I'm sorry. The guy's name is General Lee, a lovely chap in the north of England. Suspicious Observers. I'm talking about the two of Allen and Irish mythology in general. And the link I put directly in the show the comments box below here and pin it. So listen to that and share it around. It's pretty interesting. You'll enjoy that. So. Sanctify me with your vaccine, sanctify me. Pour the love of COVID Christ into my arm. Let me go, I said. Forget about the side effects. Civil service, they